The morning light spilled through the glass windows of a small cafe at the corner of the busy street, and the smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air as people came and went, their voices mixing with the soft sound of music playing in the background, and among them sat Ethan at his usual table near the window. His eyes tired from long nights and longer thoughts, he looked like any other man in a suit with his tie slightly loose and his briefcase on the floor beside him. But behind those calm eyes was a storm that had never really passed, because he had seen things that never leave a person. Once they are seen, things that change the way a man looks at the world forever. He came here every morning, ordered the same black coffee, and stared out the window at faces he did not know. Faces that smiled and laughed while he wondered if they ever knew how lucky they were to live without fear or memory of pain. Then she appeared. A young woman with tired eyes and a smile that looked forced walked between the tables, holding a tray with 2 steaming cups. Her uniform was plain, her shoes worn, and her hair tied in a simple knot. She moved carefully, as if every step needed planning. And when she reached Ethan's table, the unexpected happened. Her hand shook slightly and one of the cups tilted, spilling a thin stream of coffee across the table. Ethan jumped back just a little and she gasped, her eyes wide, her words tumbling out in a rush of apology. "I am so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to do that. I will clean it right away. Please don't be upset." Her voice trembled and she bent down with a cloth, wiping the table again and again, as if the act could erase the mistake itself. He watched her closely, not out of anger, but because something about her seemed strange. Not her clothes, not her voice, but the way her hands moved, precise, careful, and firm. Even when they shook, it was a kind of control he had only seen in one place before, the military. As she leaned forward, her sleeve slipped back for a second, and that was when Ethan saw it. The faint mark on her wrist, a burn shaped like a symbol he could never forget. A symbol that once stood for bravery and loss. The insignia of a special unit, one that he had fought beside years ago. His heart froze for a moment, his breath catching in his chest. It couldn't be. But it was that same shape etched into skin through fire and survival. He had seen it on men who never came back. He had seen it on brothers who had fallen in the dust of war. She didn't notice his stare. She just kept cleaning, whispering that she would bring another cup right away, and she turned quickly, heading to the counter. Ethan sat there, unable to move, his hand resting on the table, his mind spinning faster than he could think. What was she doing here, working as a server, when that mark belonged to soldiers, not to cafe staff? He remembered the sound of helicopters, the smell of smoke, the flash of fire across the sky. He remembered the night they lost contact with half their team, and one of them, a medic with a gentle voice, never returned. Could it be her? When she came back with a new cup of coffee, he spoke quietly, his tone soft, yet filled with something she could not quite read. "You are new here," he said. She nodded. "Yes, just started last week," her eyes avoiding his. "Your first day going well?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Yes, sir, it is. Thank you for asking," she said. But Ethan noticed how her eyes darted to the door every few seconds, like someone who expected danger at any moment, and how she kept her back straight even when carrying a tray. Her steps silent and steady, like someone trained to move without sound. It was too familiar, too exact. He wanted to ask her about the mark, but he hesitated. What if he was wrong? What if she had no idea what it meant? What if she thought he was crazy, or worse? What if someone else was watching her too? Outside, a bus passed, spraying rainwater from last night onto the sidewalk, and for a second he saw her reflection in the window behind the glass, the faint scar on her wrist glowing in the morning light, and something inside him whispered that this was no coincidence. Fate had just placed a mystery right in front of him, and he could not look away. She thanked him again for his patience before walking off to serve another table, her voice polite but distant, and he realized she carried a sadness in her words, a quiet weight that no one else seemed to notice. A story she was hiding behind that apron and that smile. As the minutes passed, Ethan felt something awaken in him, the soldier within the man who once searched for truth. No matter the cost, he knew he couldn't let her disappear without answers. He knew that mark meant something buried in the dust of time and pain. He looked around the cafe. People laughed, sipped coffee, read newspapers, completely unaware that right among them stood a ghost from the battlefield, dressed as a server pretending to live a normal life while her past whispered through every breath she took. Ethan's hands tightened around his cup, his heart beating faster than it had in years. He had found something today. Or maybe someone. And deep inside he felt the old pull of duty, the same feeling that once made him run toward danger instead of away from it. And though he didn't yet know who she really was, he knew one thing for sure. He would find out. The next morning the cafe was crowded again, with the same soft music playing and the same scent of roasted beans filling the air. And Ethan was there at his corner table, watching the door with a quiet patience that felt heavy, like a secret waiting to breathe. And when she walked in, wearing that same faded apron and that same tired smile, his heart started to race again, because he knew he could not ignore what he saw yesterday. She moved between the tables as if the world around her was made of glass, careful, gentle, avoiding every bump and every look. Her hand steady now, though her eyes carried the same distance as before. And Ethan waited until she passed by his table again before speaking softly, trying to sound casual, yet curious. "Good morning." He said the words light as air. She gave a polite nod. "Good morning, sir. Would you like your usual black coffee?" She asked, her tone calm and kind, but her eyes not quite meeting his, and he could feel there was something behind that calmness, something buried deep like a wound, still healing. "Yes." "The usual," he answered, but when she turned to leave, he added quietly, "Have you ever served before you move, like someone trained for something else? Maybe something tougher?" She paused just for a second, her hand tightening around the tray before she said, with a soft laugh, "I have served many things, sir. Coffee, tea. People's moods every day is training here." And she walked away before he could say another word. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his mind spinning. She was hiding it. He could feel it. The remark, the way she spoke, the way she carried herself. None of it fit the life of a cafe worker. And as he watched her move, he saw her wrist again, the faint scar peeking out from under her sleeve, and his chest tightened with the same unease he had carried from the war, the feeling that something important was happening right in front of him. He waited until she came back with his coffee, and then he spoke lower this time. "You were in the service, weren't you? That mark on your wrist?" "It is not just a scar. It means something. I have seen it before." Her hand froze mid-air. Her eyes locked on his face, and for a brief moment the mask she wore cracked. He saw fear flash across her gaze, sharp and cold like a knife. She whispered, "You have the wrong person, sir," then turned quickly, placing the cup down and walking away, almost running. Ethan stared after her, his heart pounding. That reaction said more than any words ever could. She knew what he was talking about. She knew that mark. He wasn't wrong. She was hiding something, something big. He finished his coffee, but he did not leave. Instead, he waited, watching the cafe as she tried to avoid his eyes. He saw the way she glanced at the window at the door as if measuring escape routes, and he remembered that same look from the battlefield, the look of someone who had been hunted before. When her shift ended, she walked out with her small backpack slung over her shoulder, and Ethan followed at a distance through the busy street, careful not to get too close. She walked fast, turning corners like someone who knew she was being watched, and for a moment, he thought she might vanish into the crowd. But then she stopped at a small alley, leaned against a wall, and sighed. Her breath shaky, her hands gripping the straps of her bag tightly. Ethan took a step closer and said quietly, "I am not here to hurt you. I just need to know the truth. That market belongs to a unit. I once knew a unit that no longer exists." Her head turned sharply, her eyes sharp and wet with fear. "You should forget you ever saw it," she said, her voice trembling because that mark destroyed every life that carried it. He stepped closer, but she shook her head. "Don't," she said. "If you keep asking questions, you will end up like the others, the ones who tried to bring the past back. Leave it buried." Her voice cracked at the end, and Ethan felt the pain behind her words. She wasn't just afraid, she was broken and still trying to stand. Her next words were almost a whisper. "Have spent 3 years trying to disappear. I just want peace, please." 3 years. The number echoed in his head, because 3 years ago one of their medics went missing, presumed dead. And that medic's name was Maya. Ethan's chest tightened. He had Seen her photo once, a blurry face in a report, a name written in a list of fallen heroes. And now here she was, alive yet afraid, hiding behind a coffee apron and a fake smile. He wanted to tell her he knew, he wanted to promise she was safe now. But something in her eyes warned him this story was bigger, darker, more dangerous than he could imagine. She turned away before he could say another word, disappearing down the alley and leaving Ethan standing there under the fading afternoon, light with questions burning like fire in his mind. Who was after her? Why was she hiding? What happened to the rest of the unit? As the sun set behind the buildings, Ethan made a silent promise he would not walk away. Not this time. He had lost, too, many brothers and sisters in that war, and if one of them was alive and running, he had to know why. He would find the truth, even if it meant opening doors that were never meant to be opened. The city lights flickered on one by one, and the streets, filled with people who had no idea that somewhere among them a soldier was still fighting a war that never ended, a war buried beneath everyday smiles and morning coffee. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt alive again. The mission had returned, and this time it was personal. The night stretched long and cold, and Ethan sat in his dim apartment, staring at the old wooden table where files and faded photos were spread out like ghosts from another time, and the soft light from the lamp flickered over his tired face as he flipped through memories that refused to die. Each paper carried a piece of the past, a past that had returned, wearing the face of a girl in a cafe. He picked up one photo torn at the edges, showing a group of soldiers smiling, in the dirt, uniforms covered in dust and eyes full of pride and fear at the same time. And there she was at the far left, her hair tied back, her smile gentle, her name written underneath, Sergeant Maya Cole, and beside her Ethan's own younger face, eyes still bright with belief that good men always win. He traced his finger over the image of her wrist where the faint mark was visible, even in the photograph, the same mark he had seen in the cafe. And his heart felt heavy with questions that had no easy answers. How could she be alive when the official report said her helicopter went down in hostile territory 3 years ago? No survivors found, no remains recovered. The words from the file blurred in his vision. Missing in action, presumed dead. And he whispered to himself, she survived somehow, she made it back, but why is she hiding? What is she afraid of? The city outside was quiet except for the hum of cars far away, and the ticking of the clock sounded louder than it should, as if counting down to something he could not yet see. He closed the folder and leaned back, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, trying to remember everything about that last mission. The explosion, the orders, the panic, and the silence that followed. He remembered the voice on the radio breaking with static, calling for backup, calling for evacuation, and then nothing. Only the sound of flames and the memory of men shouting her name into the smoke. Maya, Maya, where are you? And then the silence that buried them. Ethan rubbed his temples, the ache in his chest growing. He knew there had been secrets that day, things that never made it into the reports, and now he felt sure that Maya was carrying the truth of what really happened. The truth someone didn't want to come out. The next morning he went back to the cafe, but she was gone. The other waitress said she quit, no notice, no goodbye, just left in the middle of her shift. Ethan's stomach twisted. She was running again, and if she was running, then someone must be chasing her. He stepped outside, scanning the street. The rain had started again, and the world looked gray and tired, just like he felt. He walked aimlessly through the streets, hoping to spot her face among the crowd. But she was nowhere, and by the time the sky turned dark, he was drenched, his coat heavy with water and worry. He found himself standing near the old bus station where soldiers once departed for missions years ago, and the memory hit him like thunder. The same buses, the same smell of fuel and fear, the same feeling of leaving something behind. Then his phone buzzed, a message with no name, no number, just words that read, "Stop looking, or you will end up like her." The message vanished as quickly as it came. His pulse raced. This wasn't just coincidence. Someone knew he was searching, and they wanted him to stop. But Ethan had never been good at stopping. He went home and opened another old box hidden under his bed. Inside were military contacts, old letters, names of people who once owed him favors. He started calling one by one, asking about Maya Cole, asking if anyone had heard a rumor, a whisper, A sighting, most said no. Some said maybe. One name came up again and again, a man called Grant, former commander of their unit, now working in private security with deep ties to people who preferred silence over justice. Ethan wrote the name on a piece of paper, his hand shaking slightly. Grant had been the one who gave the final orders that day, the one who declared the mission a failure and the team lost. If Maya had survived, maybe she had something that could destroy him. Maybe that was why she was hiding. The thought made Ethan's chest tighten. He knew he had to find her before someone else did. She was not safe, and neither was he anymore. The truth was dangerous, but he was already in too deep to turn back. He spent the next few days searching, following small leads and dead ends, until one night he checked a nearby street camera feed using an old friend's help. And there she was, Maya, walking fast through a dark alley, wearing a gray coat and carrying her same small backpack. And beside her on the screen, a shadow followed. Keeping distance but never losing sight, Ethan's breath caught. He froze. The timestamp showed it was from just last night. She was being watched, followed, maybe hunted. He downloaded the footage and slammed his fist on the table, frustration and fear mixing in his chest. She was out there alone, and the past was closing in fast. He stared at the blurry image on his screen. Her face turned halfway toward the camera, her eyes tired but alert, and something inside him burned a promise he had made long ago. No soldier left behind. Not then. Not now, he whispered, the words to himself like a vow. I am coming for you, Maya. I will not let them take you again. The clock ticked louder, the rain beat harder against the window, and Ethan felt the world around him shrinking into a single mission. Find her, protect her, uncover the truth that someone buried under lies, the kind of truth that could burn everything down. He stood by the window watching the city lights blur through the rain, knowing that the shadows of the past were no longer behind him. They were moving, closer with every heartbeat, and somewhere out there Maya was running again, running from ghosts that refused to die, and he knew this was only the beginning. The wind was cold that evening, carrying dust and whispers through the narrow streets as Ethan followed the path that led toward the park where the cameras last saw her. The city lights flickered in the puddles like broken stars, and his breath came out heavy with tension. He had been walking for hours searching for a sign, anything, that could lead him to Maya. He had almost given up when he saw her sitting alone on a worn wooden bench near the old fountain, her gray coat pulled tight against the chill, her eyes staring at nothing, her backpack resting by her feet. She looked smaller than he remembered and more tired, like someone who had been running for far too long. Ethan hesitated, his heart pounding with a mix of relief and fear. He didn't want to scare her, but he knew she wouldn't listen to anyone else. He stepped closer, his shoes silent on the wet ground, and said quietly, Maya, it's me. You don't have to hide anymore. Her head jerked up, her eyes wide for a moment. She looked ready to run, but when she recognized his face, something changed. Her shoulders dropped a little and she whispered, How did you find me? Her voice soft and cracked with exhaustion. I never stopped looking, he said. You disappeared after that day, and everyone thought you were gone. I saw your mark at the cafe. I knew it was you. She looked away, her gaze drifting toward the empty fountain. The water still and dark as her memories, she said in a low voice. I didn't disappear. I was erased. They made sure of that. Ethan stepped closer, confusion twisting in his chest. Erased? What do you mean, Maya? What happened to you out there? Her lips trembled. She opened her backpack and pulled out a small metal tag, scratched and dented with numbers barely visible. It was her identification tag, but part of it was burned. She turned it in her hand and said quietly, This is all they left me with when they called the mission a failure. They didn't want survivors. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. He remembered the explosion, the radio silence, the confusion, and the report signed by Commander Grant that said the entire team was lost. He remembered believing it for years. She continued, her words slow and heavy after the crash. I woke up alone, surrounded by wreckage. I tried to reach command, but no signal. I waited for rescue, but none came. I realized later someone had ordered them not to come because they didn't want witnesses to what really happened that night. Ethan's hands curled into fists. Who would do that? Why, Maya's eyes glistened under the streetlight because they were moving weapons through the area. She said quietly, Our mission was just a cover. The commander made a deal, and when we found out, he made sure we wouldn't talk. Only I survived. But not for long. They hunted me ever since. Ethan's chest burned with anger that couldn't be held back. He knelt beside her, his voice shaking. Maya, you should have told someone. You should have come to me. I could have helped. She gave a faint smile, a sad one. You were still serving. You had a family. A life. I couldn't drag you into this. I thought I could disappear. Blend in, work somewhere quiet. No one would notice a girl with a scar, but they always find me. Ethan, they always find me. He looked around the park, his instincts sharp. The shadows between the trees felt too deep, too still, and for a moment he thought he saw a movement, a flash of light, maybe the reflection of a lens. He said softly, Maya, we need to move now. Someone might be watching. She stood slowly, her hands trembling slightly as she packed her things. Where can we go? She asked, her voice tense. Somewhere safe, Ethan replied. I know people who still owe me favors. We can figure out what to do, but we can't stay here. They started walking together through the quiet streets, their footsteps soft. On the wet pavement, every sound behind them making Ethan's heart beat faster. He could feel eyes on them, though he couldn't see who was watching. When they reached the end of the block, Maya stopped suddenly and grabbed his arm, her face pale. Did you hear that? She whispered. Ethan listened, and yes, there it was, faint but real. The sound of a car engine starting somewhere nearby, then stopping. Then silence again. He pulled her into a side alley, keeping close to the wall. Whoever was after her wasn't far. He could feel it. The same sense he used to have on patrol in the dark when danger waited just beyond the light. Maya's breath came fast, her words trembling. I can't do this again. I can't keep running. Ethan, you don't understand. They won't stop until I'm gone. He turned to her, his eyes fierce. Then we won't run. We fight. We find proof and make them face what they did. She stared at him, disbelief and hope mixing in her gaze. You'd risk everything for me after all these years. He nodded without hesitation. You saved my life once on that field. I owe you, and even if I didn't, this is bigger than both of us. Maya blinked, tears filling her eyes, then she said softly, Then we start tonight. I still have something they want. Something I took from the crash site, a small drive hidden deep inside my pack. It holds the data they tried to erase. It's proof, Ethan. He looked at her with shock and a new spark of determination. That drive could destroy them. He said it could. And this. She nodded, but it could also destroy us if it falls into the wrong hands, she whispered. Ethan reached out his hand. We'll protect it together. We'll expose the truth. You're not alone anymore. The wind picked up around them, carrying the sound of distant sirens, and Maya glanced behind her one last time, before following Ethan into the night, their shadows merging with the darkness, as the city watched in silence, unaware that two lost soldiers had just begun a new war, one that would reveal the lies buried deep beneath peace. The night wrapped around them as they walked quickly through narrow streets, their footsteps echoing softly against the cold pavement, and every sound felt louder than it should. A car door slamming far away, a dog barking in the distance. The world seemed to whisper danger. With every passing second, Ethan guided Maya toward an old storage building on the edge of the city, a place few people ever went anymore. When they reached it, he pushed open the rusty door and led her inside. The air smelled of dust and oil and broken memories. He turned on a small light and it flickered, revealing a few crates and a metal table covered with old tools. This place belonged to an old friend, someone Ethan had trusted. During his service days, someone who didn't ask questions. Maya sat down, her backpack still clutched tightly in her hands, her fingers pale, her voice barely a whisper. Are you sure it's safe here? Ethan nodded. As safe as anywhere can be tonight, he said, and then sat across from her, his eyes locked on the small drive she had mentioned earlier. She hesitated, then slowly pulled it from the hidden pocket inside her bag. It was a small black device, scratched and dented like it had survived fire. She placed it on the table between them and said, This drive holds the data logs from our last mission. The real mission, not the cover story. It has the coordinates, the radio calls, the hidden orders. Everything that proves Grant's betrayal. Ethan stared at the drive, his mind racing. If what she said was true, this tiny piece of metal could destroy powerful people, but also paint a target on their backs forever. He leaned forward and asked, "Why didn't you give it to anyone before Maya?" "Why wait this long? Because I didn't trust anyone," she said softly, her eyes filling with old pain the first time I tried to share it. "Someone found me 2 days later, and that person disappeared after that. I learned to keep it close, to never stay in. One place to never use my real name. I thought if I stayed small, I could stay alive." Ethan reached across the table, gently taking her hand. "You're not alone now," he said. "We can bring this to the right people, to those who still care about truth." She looked at him with a faint smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Maybe," she said, "but the right people are hard to find these days, and the wrong ones seem to find me too easily." Before Ethan could respond, there was a noise outside, faint but sharp, like a shoe scraping on gravel. Both of them froze. Maya's grip tightened around his hand, and he signaled for her to stay silent. He moved slowly toward the door, peeking through the crack between the boards. The alley beyond was dark, but he saw, a shadow moving close, the glint of something metallic under the streetlight. Maybe a gun, maybe worse. He turned back, whispering, "They found us, get down now." Maya slid off her chair, hiding behind the crates as Ethan grabbed a metal rod from the floor, his eyes scanning the door a second later. The silence broke. The door burst open and 2 men stepped inside, their faces hidden behind masks. One shouted, "Don't move." Ethan swung the rod fast, hitting the first man's arm, the weapon clattering. To the floor, the second lunged forward, but Maya threw a crate at him, knocking him off balance. Chaos filled the small room. Shouts echoing, metal crashing as they fought. Ethan moved with the sharpness of old training, blocking blows, twisting arms, until the attackers stumbled back, one bleeding from the lip, the other gasping. One of them snarled, "Give us the drive, and maybe you live." Ethan stepped in front of Maya, his voice hard, "Never." And before the man could reach again, Ethan hit the light switch, plunging the room into darkness. The sound of scuffling filled the air, followed by a crash, then silence. When the light flickered back on, the 2 men were gone. The door swinging open to the empty alley. Maya's breathing was fast. She looked at Ethan, her voice shaking. "They will keep coming, won't they?" Ethan nodded, "Yes, until we end this for good." He checked the drive again, making sure it was still there, and said, "We take this to someone. I trust he can decode it and get it into safe hands. His name is Harris. He served with me. He knows how deep this goes." Maya wiped her tears and nodded. "Then let's go now before they return." They left the building, moving quickly through the back streets, the rain beginning to fall again, turning, the air cold and sharp. The city lights reflected off the wet ground, and every step felt heavier with fear and determination. Ethan led her to an old car parked behind an abandoned gas station, and they drove off into the night, heading toward the outskirts where Harris lived. As they drove, Maya looked out the window, her voice quiet after all these years. "I thought I could forget. I thought I could pretend. But it never really leaves you, does it? The noise, the fear, the faces." Ethan glanced at her and said, "No. It never leaves, but sometimes facing it is the only way to make it stop." She nodded silently, the rain blurring the glass, her reflection flickering against the lights outside. After a long moment, she whispered, "Ethan, if anything happens, promise me you'll finish it. Promise me the truth will come out." He looked at her, steady and sure. "I promise," he said. The car disappeared into the dark highway, their destination uncertain but their purpose clear behind them. The city glowed faintly, unaware that 2 people carried a secret, powerful enough to shatter everything built on lies. And in that small silence between thunder and rain, both of them knew this was no longer just about survival. It was about redemption and revenge. Would you like me to continue with part 6? Keeping the same emotional, suspenseful, no-dot storytelling style and a powerful ending? You said, please write part 6 of the story. Make it more unique and engaging, using simple and basic English. The part should be exactly 800 words and written in third-person style. Do not use any full stops, dots, anywhere in the text. Ensure the story continues smoothly and keeps the audience hooked from the start. ChatGPT said, "Here is part 6 of your story." Title: He thought she was a server. Until He recognized the mark of a soldier. Exactly 800 words, written in third person, using simple and basic English and with no full stops anywhere. This final part brings everything together with emotion, action, and closure, while keeping the tension and curiosity alive until the end. Part 6, Redemption and Return. The road stretched ahead like a river of darkness, and the car moved through it with quiet speed, the rain falling harder now, washing away the dust of the night. Ethan's hands were tight on the steering wheel, his eyes focused, while Maya sat beside him, clutching the small drive close to her chest. The hum of the engine filled the silence between them, but both were lost in thoughts too heavy to speak aloud. The lights of the city faded behind them, replaced by the emptiness of open fields and broken fences, the kind of place where secrets could hide. Ethan checked the mirror again, scanning for headlights. There were none for now. But he could not shake the feeling that danger was only a breath away. After an hour, they reached a small farmhouse at the edge of a forest, the walls old and cracked, but the windows glowing faintly. Ethan parked the car and said quietly, "This is Harris's place. He will help us. He owes me from long ago." Maya nodded, her face pale but steady, and they stepped out into the cold air, the smell of wet earth thick around them. When they knocked, the door opened just enough for a tired face to appear. Harris looked older than Ethan remembered, his hair gray, his eyes cautious until recognition flickered, and he pulled them inside without a word. The warmth of a small fire filled the room, and the sound of rain softened against the roof. Ethan explained everything in quick, quiet words: the mark, the cafe, the men who attacked them, the drive, the betrayal. Harris listened, his jaw tight, his hands resting on the table. When Ethan finished, Harris stood, walked to a drawer and pulled out an old laptop, then said, "Let's see what ghosts you brought." Maya handed him the drive, her fingers shaking a little as he connected it to the computer. For a moment, nothing happened. Then lines of data filled the screen, strange codes and coordinates, flashing like hidden truths waiting to be found. Harris frowned as he scrolled, his voice low. "This is bigger than I thought, Ethan. This isn't just Grant. It's a whole network moving illegal weapons across borders and using fake missions to cover their tracks. Your unit was the distraction. The fall guys." Maya's breath caught, her eyes wide. "That means they killed our people to protect this." Harris nodded grimly. "Yes, and when you survived, you became a threat." Ethan felt anger rise in his chest, his fists tightening. "This ends now. We take it public. We send it to every news outlet, every government office." Harris shook his head. "Not yet. If you move too fast, they'll bury it again. We need proof that ties Grant directly to it." Before Ethan could respond, a sound cut through the rain. The sharp echo of tires on gravel headlights flashed across the windows. Harris turned, his face pale. "They found you, didn't?" Ethan moved fast, shutting off the lights and motioning for Maya to stay low. Through the cracks in the curtain, he saw 3 black cars pulling up, men stepping out with weapons, shadows moving through the storm. They were surrounded. Harris handed Ethan a small device, a backup drive copy. "This," he said, "if they get me, you run." Ethan took it without hesitation. Maya whispered, "What do we do now?" And Ethan's voice came steady. "We fight until we can't." The door crashed open before he finished, and chaos filled the room. Bullets cracked through wood, sparks flew as Harris dove behind the table, returning fire. Ethan pulled Maya toward the back door, shouting over the noise, "Go now." They ran into the rain, their feet sinking in, mud flashes of light cutting through the dark as the men chased them. Ethan fired back with Harris's weapon, each shot echoing through the fields. They reached the trees and ducked behind a fallen log, Maya breathing hard, clutching the drive against her chest. Ethan looked at her and said, "Keep moving. Don't stop, no matter what happens." Suddenly, a loud explosion tore through the night. The farmhouse engulfed in flames, Harris's voice lost in the roar. Maya screamed and tried to go back, but Ethan grabbed her arm. "No," he shouted. He knew the risk. "We can't waste it now. We finish this for him." They ran deeper, into the forest, the rain washing the smoke from their faces until finally they reached the old highway. Ethan's car was gone, but a truck approached, slowing as it saw them. The driver, an older woman with kind eyes, opened the door. "Get in quick," she said. "The storm is getting worse." They climbed inside, wet, cold hearts pounding. The driver dropped them at a nearby town before dawn. Ethan found a public computer and uploaded the data from the drive to multiple secure channels. The files sent to news networks and military watchdogs across the world. It was out now, impossible to stop the truth flying faster than bullets ever could. Hours later, the headlines broke across every screen. Leaked documents expose secret military cover-up. Commander under investigation. Maya watched from a quiet cafe window, the same kind of cafe where it all began. Her eyes filled with tears that she did not wipe away. Ethan sat across from her, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, his face tired but at peace. "It's over now," he said softly. She nodded. "Maybe for them. Yes, but for me, it will never really end. I carry them all with me. Every name, every face, every mark." He reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. "You don't carry it alone anymore," he said. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, turning the wet streets to gold, and for the first time in years, Maya smiled, not the forced kind, but real and quiet and full of life. She looked at the scar on her wrist and whispered, "I thought this mark was my curse, maybe. It was my way back home." Ethan smiled too, the world moving again around them, unaware that two soldiers had just changed it forever, somewhere far away. Grant was being led away in handcuffs, the same mark of justice now, carved into his fate, and the story of the lost medic who came back from the shadows began to spread, a reminder that truth never stays buried, not when courage keeps digging. And as they walked out of the cafe into the bright morning, the past finally started to fade behind them like smoke after a storm, leaving only the promise of peace ahead.